my mom's going. I just went to like Raleigh Beat Back. In fact, I should make sure this.
to the August 19th meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. I'd like everyone to go around and say what your name is and what committee you're on and when that committee meets, please. Why don't we start with Mr. Black, staff member?
I'm Paul Black, City of Raleigh staff.
I'm Dwight Otwell. I am on the Bicycle Planning Committee, and we meet right before this meeting every month.
I'm Pierre Tong. I'm also on the Bicycle Planning Committee.
Nick Neptune on the Outreach Committee. I believe we meet the second Thursday of each month at 5 p.m.
Mary,
6 p.m. Correction. Outreach Committee meets at 6 p.m. the second Thursday of every month. Yes. Thank you.
Higgs a Village around here. Mary Sal, Bicycle Planning Committee.
I'm Robert Parrish. I'm on the Pedestrian Planning Committee. We do a lot of walking.
There you go. Susan Hatchell, Chair. We meet right here.
Paul Neville, I'm on the Community Outreach Committee.
I'm Elizabeth Alley. I'm on the Pedestrian Committee, and I believe we meet the Thursday preceding the full commission meetings. Is that right? Just
Third Thursday at 1.
I was second. You're on it. Awesome.
Rebecca Proudfit, I'm on the Outreach Committee.
Kelly Woodball, Pedestrian Committee.
All righty. And Mr. Lamb will be joining us shortly. It is time for the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those, and do I hear a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
I second.
Anybody have any comments, discussion? All right, we'll take a vote on the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Great, moving right along.
Susan, if I may, Eric wanted us to make the motion to amend the agenda at the very beginning of the meeting. Would you mind if we went ahead and did that now?
You may.
So we, after our the redo at City Council for our work plan, we've been going around and speaking to council folks and getting some feedback and trying to figure out our plan of action for getting it approved at the Transit and Transportation Committee coming up this month. So I would like to move to I would like to move to amend the agenda to include a discussion under old business about updating our plan of work to get it straight for the Transportation and Transit Committee.
Okay, there's a motion. Anyone second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I did want to point out that it would be very important for us to complete that activity so that we have the ability to meet the timeline of getting to the next City Council Transportation meeting, which is the end of this month.
Next Tuesday.
Week, yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we do this.
Yeah.
I urge us to vote positive for this.
Well, the plan is to do it this evening. All right, any other further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Great. Thank you, Mr. Otwell.
I will point out that I spoke with Paul, and if the discussion goes along, we can move to further amend the agenda and postpone one of the new business items until next time. So that
okay.
can give us a little flexibility. We don't have to worry too much about the time.
Excellent. Let me find a pen. I've come unprepared. Okay, that sounds great. And our motion has gone through and passed, so we are going to put that under old business.
Correct.
Okay. Now is the time in our agenda where we take public comment. So if anyone has come to speak with us, we'd love for you to come forward. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes, but we are so happy to see you.
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Delcourt. I'm the Safe Routes to School Coordinator for Wake County. I am also a Raleigh resident. I live at 3020 Farrier Road. I'm here today because I would like to share some information with you about a program that we're looking into doing in partnership with Raleigh Parks and Recreation, and also ask for your support on that. The program is based out of Charlotte. It's called Learn to Ride. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an event that some folks in the bike community put on about 5 to 6 times a year, typically held at local community centers in order to teach mostly children, but sometimes adults, how to ride bikes. So I've had 2 conversations with an individual at Raleigh Parks and Rec, and a relatively new position, I believe, the Health and Wellness Coordinator, and they're very interested in partnering with us to do an event like this here in Raleigh. So we're looking at potentially a November event to get prepared and try that out for the first time. and hopefully do that a couple more times in the spring if it's successful. So I just wanted to keep you all up to date on some things that are happening and ask for BPAC support. If it makes sense, to ask you to refer that to the bicycle committee and that they continue to work with us on how they might support that or how BPAC might support that.
Okay.
Yeah, we spoke about this in our committee meeting prior to this, and I would like to go ahead and move that the BPAC vote to send this to the Bicycle Planning Committee, that we may develop recommendations for how the BPAC can coordinate with the Safe Route to Schools program to promote this event.
Second motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Great, thank you so much. Any other public comment? Oh, come on up. We're happy to see you. We'll push Eric out of the way.
No worries.
I'll go this time. Thank you. I'm Jonathan Powell. I live at 1201 Trillium Circle, Apartment B, in Raleigh. So I'm here representing Oaks and Spokes. One thing is, first, thank you all for your service in doing this, and I'm really glad that we have a full commission now. It's great to see so many faces. So there are a couple things that I want to talk about. First, I wanted to thank city staff for responding to my inquiry about pedestrian signal timings. They were quick to, when I mentioned that on some streets they weren't flipping, they were quick to make some changes on a couple different intersections that I identified. I'd like to ask that they continue to look into that. I think it's a really easy win to have pedestrian signals flip whenever they're available across the city, so that pedestrians feel it's easier to get across. They have to wait less time. If they don't press the button, it's not a big deal if that works for the intersection. The second thing that I wanted to mention was Oaks and Spokes has done a candidate questionnaire for City Council and Mayor, and we'll soon be posting the results of our questions on our website. So if anybody is interested in, we have about 6 questions that most of them responded to on bicycle and pedestrian subjects, and we invite you all to come look and see what they say, and the public as well. I also am asking for an update on the Gorman Street cycle track. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're queuing up, I can go ahead and the Gorman Street cycle track, to my knowledge, is almost ready to go. I believe that we are waiting for some documentation to get approved at NCDOT. So if I remember right, we are waiting for right-of-way certification. Don't hold me to that, but it's something, if it's not that, it's a similar document that we're waiting so that we can proceed.
Okay, so we are moving forward. Excellent. Is there any other public comment? Eric is queuing something up. Is this, not sure what he's...
This evening's agenda.
What's that? Oh, it's the agenda. Thank you. This one's not working tonight. All right, well, it doesn't appear there's any other public comment, so we will move on the agenda to staff reports, now that Mr. Lamb is back in his seat.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see the full commission here this evening. Thank you very much for being here.
It's exciting.
So in terms of things that we have coming up, one of the things that we want to make the commission aware of is that we have submitted for renewal for bike-friendly city, bike-friendly community status. So we first received bronze level designation in 2011, which we successfully renewed in 2015, and we have applied again. So we are looking to hopefully either maintain bronze or optimistically to be able to obtain silver based on the efforts that we've made collectively. The bike-friendly community application and designation by the League of American Bicyclists is based on a variety of factors. We got very good feedback from the League during the last cycle about areas where we can improve, and we use that scorecard as the basis for elements that went into the bicycle plan. So we're hopeful that we've made a lot of progress since our last application, and we will see what the results are. As part of that, I'm sorry, please.
When will we hear that result?
I don't know what the time frame is for. Okay. One of the things that's important about this process is they don't just take our word for it. So there's a lot of opportunity for the community to provide feedback. They will reach out likely to some of the commission members as stakeholders to help verify that what the staff has submitted is fair and accurate and to get any other feedback. There's also the opportunity for the community to participate, and we'll be posting a link shortly that allows for the community to help with this report card that we receive as a community. So we're very excited to be once again pursuing that this year. One other thing we wanted to bring to the Commission's attention is that we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the BPAC. The BPAC was founded in October of 2009, and we were going to suggest that it might be a nice opportunity to invite all of the former Commission members that would like to join us for some type of social event. We would be happy to coordinate that if the Commission is interested.
Yeah, listen, we can have a spoke party.
Yeah, it's in October?
Yes.
Also Walktober.
It is also Walktober.
Walktober, yeah. Well, it's funny because that's one of my questions for you this evening is our 10th anniversary, because I think it would be lovely for us to have some sort of celebration for the milestone. So we should start planning, it sounds like.
Sounds good. We'll coordinate with you offline and look at some options for venues and what the format would be. Okay. So we'll work on that. Thank you. I don't have any other updates unless, Paul Fontaine, do you have any?
Go ahead. I was going to say, we held an open house for the Crosstown Neighborhood Bikeway, which was the kickoff for that project that's in the priority 10-year plan. We had really good turnout. We were, however, not able to do the bike audit because of the weather. We are going to reschedule that.
Huh. Keep talking to your mic.
You don't have a mic.
Oh, well, okay.
I just wanted to provide some quick bike share updates. We have 25 of our 30 stations up and running. The remaining 5 are probably our most trickiest stations because they are on private property, state property, and have some concrete pads and some grading work that needs to be done, so they're taking a little longer than anticipated, but we are working to move those forward and get the remaining 5 installed. As of last week, we had a total of 15,512 rides, 28,600 miles logged, and a total of 4,443 total member users that have used the system so far. So we're averaging about 714 new users a month since we launched.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is not in any way to cast anything negative on the system, but I've noticed at a number of the kiosks, internet or network connection problems. And I've called in as customer service, and Bowegan or whoever answers their hotline has been very responsive. Is this a common problem? Was I just unlucky to find 2 or 3 kiosks that had network problems this weekend, or is this an issue that we need to address?
So I do know it's likely, because I've experienced the same thing. My understanding with talking to Bowegan, it's a combination of 2 things. They are doing a system update, and that's caused some confusion with their kiosk system that they're working to fix. And the other portion is some of our kiosks are still running on batteries while they get connected to the grid. Duke Energy is still working to connect some of our stations. And so if the battery dies, the kiosk has to be restarted.
Okay, thank you.
A few of the things, Paul and I both participated last week in a People for Bikes event that they held at Raleigh Brewing over in West Raleigh, and nice opportunity to talk about our programs, and other folks were there, including East Coast Greenway, talking about the different activities and how important the links that we have through Raleigh and through the Greater Triangle are to their overall East Coast network. On the council front, one thing to remind the commission, I think that we, I'm sorry, actually this is the first meeting since the July meeting. So the city council did not adopt the commission's work plan and instead opted to put that in committee for additional discussion. So that additional discussion will take place next week at their transportation and transit meeting. That is, I believe the date on that is the 24th.
I think it's Tuesday,
Yes.
It's
It is
Tuesday?
Tuesday at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, that's what's on my calendar.
Yes. So I'd certainly encourage commission members to attend that meeting and see what the city council's interest is.
Yeah, so I would like to remind everyone, I won't be chair any longer, so although I have on my calendar, I intend to be there since it's a kind of a holdover thing. It would be great, I think, if more council members could attend that event, and particularly some new leadership as we deal with that later tonight. But would you agree, Eric, it would be nice to have, a broad attendance from the commission?
I think that's a good idea for the commission members to be able to hear from the city council what their questions are. There was no guidance given at the city council meeting. Councilor Crowder was the one that had some questions and asked that it be sent to the committee for additional discussion.
And when is this meeting again?
It is Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday?
27th.
Oh, 27th, and at 3 o'clock, did you say?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Here?
I believe that is correct. Let me just verify the room number very quickly.
Okay. And so I was also going to ask, what were they discussing? But I believe you said that you don't really know. They don't know what the questions that they had are, so that's good enough.
That's right. And
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Dwight and I were fortunate enough to meet with Councilmember Crowder, and we had a very productive discussion, and that's why we're put it on the agenda tonight to talk about our work plan. I'm hopeful we will resolve it this evening and can get it forwarded around and be ready to answer what probably will be the questions. There could be others that come up about
So
it.
they're working on a work plan. Okay, I get it.
correct. And that meeting is at 3 o'clock. It's actually upstairs in room 305.
Oh,
in the conference room,
upstairs,
so not in
305.
council chambers.
Okay. All right.
And then lastly, at the end of the meeting, I need to get with a few of the newer commissioners to get updated emergency contact information. Make sure that we have that, just in case anything should happen at a meeting, and we have emergency contact information. So I'll be getting with everyone at the conclusion of the meeting tonight.
I actually did have one more update. It's sort of outside of my general purview, but it is one of the projects in the bike plan, the Trenton Road side path. Actually, Parks and Rec has retained a consultant to begin the designs on that one. I met with them on Friday the 9th.
Could we also get an update on Blunt Person? What's up?
It's been the contract has been awarded. I believe the contractor has the notice to proceed, so it is literally in the going to happen any day.
Right.
But it's live.
Is there a timeline for when that any day, which, you know what I mean?
No.
Like a start to end date for the contract?
Yeah, usually when we let a contract like that, the contractor has license within that period of the contract to
Right.
stage the work. The resurfacing portion will likely take place sometime soon because of the need to do that during warmer weather.
Right.
And that resurfacing component is everything north of Edenton Street.
Right, okay.
And so, and a reminder, a big portion of the project is reworking the layout of Wake Forest Road north of Delway and all the way to the intersection at Capitol. But yeah, you should start to see activity anytime on that.
Okay.
We actually
I'm
started to implement some of the parking changes associated with that, went in last week.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other staff reports, or does anyone else have questions for staff? I think we've kind of agreed we're not going to have project updates the list each time, but if you have any questions about any other projects, this will be the time to do that. All right.
Thank you.
You guys are done? Perfect. Now it is time for committee and member reports, and the first is the chair report, and it was it's been a busy little time, and some of you were with me at some of the events. I went to the community-wide climate change action plan for the city of Raleigh, which is back in July, kind of interesting group. And also back in July, I went to the Watch for Me action planning workshop, and I was there with Paul, and I know Mary was there, and wasn't somebody else?
Fontaine.
Fontaine, yeah, Fontaine was there. I was going to say, I remember there were several of us. That was an interesting thing. And then there was an ARTS, which stands for Active Routes to School webinar just a couple weeks ago that was very interesting. And one of the things that came out of that is that Wake County Health Services or somebody got a grant to do that. So it might be interesting to kind of do a little follow-up and ask to hear from them at some point in time about, the money is used for educational purposes, not for active projects. But anyway, it might be interesting to hear about that. Today was the FHWA Bikeway Selection Guide training, and Pierre and Paul and I were at that. It was interesting.
Fontaine.
Yeah. Oh, and then Fontaine. So, I'm sorry, darling. I keep forgetting you. But that was a very interesting meeting, and there's some new documents and things out that would be very helpful, I think, for people who are doing bikeway planning. And then, as I mentioned, Dwight and I did have a chance to meet with council member Crowder, and we had a very productive meeting. And I think we've been given some direction before our transportation meeting in the next week or so, to kind of focus and condense our work plan. And I think a lot of us had already talked about that. And we talked about what are your top 3 items. And we've been kind of trying to focus. So I think, her comments, she had some very specific comments, but her comments were a little bit more, would you agree, Dwight, kind of more general about that. So we'll talk about that under new business. And I'm hopeful maybe we can get that resolved this evening. So that's what I've been up to. I'll pass the microphone to Bike Planning Committee.
I apologize for my absence last month. I have a few things to catch up on. So I think the first thing on the list was to follow up on Susan Marie's comment to the BPAC and to the city about her son's collision on Strickland Road and her interaction with the police department. So I think I promised a report on that. Following her outreach, we looked into it and why didn't the special crash unit investigate? They only come for serious crashes. He's getting his collarbone reconstructed in the hospital. That seems serious to me. So we had a bunch of questions about how police prioritize their investigations and what triggers an investigation, as well as some specific details about this crash. And so I got in touch with Officer Morris, who is, if you remember him, he was our representative at the retreat.
Yeah.
He is our liaison with the police department, and he is on the special crash unit. Let me see if I can get the full name. Crash Reconstruction Unit, the Raleigh Police Crash Reconstruction Unit. I asked him what triggers an investigation from your unit. Basically, it's only a fatality. We get so many crashes in Raleigh every day that the Raleigh Crash Reconstruction Unit cannot respond to every serious collision. Let me see. There's 3 crash reconstruction officers. Most cities don't have dedicated crash reconstruction officers. They're part of a speeding duty or patrol duties. But we have 3 full-time. We have 5 to 10 serious injuries from auto crashes daily. So those 3 officers cannot respond to those on a daily basis. So basically, if it's fatal or they think it may turn fatal because the person is about to die in the hospital, that's when they respond. Officer Morris, we average around 30 traffic fatalities a year. This year, we're already up to 19. So we're well ahead of the curve. We asked why wasn't the boy interviewed in this case, because he was carried away in the ambulance and the crash report did not include his statement. And he said, almost without a doubt, when you interview the pedestrian, they will say, I did not see the car. There's hardly anybody that says, yeah, I saw it, and then I just stepped out anyway because I thought he would stop. So he said that they often don't get very useful information from the pedestrian victims, especially when they're injured. So it's a standard for them not to get a full interview from them when they're on the way to the hospital. The testimony is often not very helpful. The victim is often unavailable. In this case, the young man reported to his mother seeing a car crest the hill as he began his crossing, and So there was some additional information that could go into that report. So even without a full reconstruction, the officers on the scene of a collision where there's an injury should do a certain set of measurements. Susan Marie, who filed this comment with us originally, had said that this did not occur. The police did not do any kind of measurements, just took a statement from the driver and drove off. And Officer Morris said they do an electronic submission of these crash forms, and I have the number. It is the NCDMV/349. And that you cannot fill that out and hit submit unless you enter in those kind of measurements. So it's very likely that those measurements were taken, because it's the procedure for the police to do so, and you can follow up at the precinct office to find the crash report for the particular entrance that you're interested in. And so Officer Morris was interested by this, and so he has gone to look back into this particular case, and I have not spoken with him since, but I'll follow up, and if I hear anything, I will get back to you guys. So that was a rather lengthy response, I'm sorry, but that was the extent of our conversation.
So in this situation, the child was walking?
So I failed to describe the situation, but he was coming on a Greenway Trail South, and the Greenway Trail terminates on Strickland Road with a curb cut and a ramp. So it looks like a nice little inviting path to the street. There's some driveways on the other side. So he is in the habit of coming down the Greenway Trail and crossing the road and going up onto the sidewalk down a bit into his subdivision. In this case, he says there was a landscaping truck that was parked on the road halfway up on the right-of-way, kind of blocking the view. And so he had to go off the ramp and jump the curb. And then when he went out, that's when he got struck. It's not officially a crosswalk because there's not an official maintained like intersection there on the other side. So it's a kind of an ambiguous situation. But the police have said that he did not have right-of-way. It does not count as a crosswalk.
But he wasn't on a bike.
He was on a bike. I'm sorry. He was
So
on a bicycle.
he was not a pedestrian.
He was not a pedestrian.
He was not a pedestrian.
That's
at that
correct.
point.
Well,
So,
in that, you said that 5 to 10 crashes happen per day, and they don't have but 3 officers committed to those types of accidents. Was there any thought given to the possibility of getting at least 2 more persons for that?
We did not get into police staffing issues in our discussion. Those are not the only police that respond to those kind of crashes. If there's a serious collision, then there's many units that respond. But as far as a special crash reconstruction unit, they have special training, they have special devices, and they do a lot more investigation than normal. When there's a normal serious crash, other units get pulled in and take measurements, but the construction unit will follow behind and as they have to take all those measurements.
I think oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to comment that, I think it's kind of obvious if they need to have more people specifically for that incident, even though, more people respond, they admit themselves they can't keep up, so add more people.
The police are stretched thin on every side.
I think in the purview of this commission, maybe a recommendation we could make is that it seems like they're not adequately interviewing the pedestrians after the crash even, right? Because there were conditions
vehicle users either, because bicycles are vehicles. And so in the idea of the law, there was an incident and one of the vehicle users wasn't interviewed or asked for a statement. So
He was not a pedestrian.
he was not a pedestrian.
Sorry, I did misspeak. I apologize.
So,
Correct.
well,
That's
no,
a good
it's just-
clarification, right?
Yeah.
And there just might be a more robust process for interviewing, because right now they're saying it's too difficult to interview the pedestrian or in this case, it was a cyclist, and they're kind of just dismissing that when there could be an effort to get all the conditions.
So anybody involved in one of those incidents has the right to add their statement to the report.
Okay.
And Officer Moore has been in contact with Susan Marie and has suggested that she do so. And I have every belief that she's followed up on that. They've retained legal help. But in general, yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I don't want to jump right in and start making motions about how the police should.
Well,
I'd like to investigate the issue. I think it's definitely worthy of consideration.
sure. I think that would be how we would interface with this as a commission, right?
think so. So there wasn't anything to follow up on, and they weren't making a recommendation. This was just a follow-up on a question that got asked to us.
Well, thank you for, I know you had been working on this, and since you missed last month, you didn't give us that update, and I think that's helpful information. I feel certain that the police have a very, very robust and full schedule. And if there are things that we feel we need to keep asking questions about or suggesting, I think it's a problem, but I feel that it sounds like they are short-staffed and
Yeah.
long
Hours,
hard
short
hours.
staff, and they need to be more appreciated too, so, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a difficult
yeah.
problem on both sides. And, but I really do appreciate you following up with them, and I think that's,
The boy involved is doing a lot better. He's walking again, and he's gone back to school. So
Good.
he does not like going on his bicycle yet, but they hope to get back to it.
excellent. Well, good. And I think we as a commission already talked about maybe as you and I will be working with the Greenway plan when it gets moving, and I think we've talked about, kind of looking for this exact situation of where greenways may be kind of abruptly ending as an opportunity to talk about what measures might need to be taken in the future. And what else from the bicycle?
For my second report, I would like to follow up on our discussion regarding the bus rapid transit and the downtown transportation plan vote. So following our no vote to decline to approve of the bicycle portion of the downtown transportation plan, we have been working with some of the stakeholders to try to figure out how we can continue to have a role to work out a positive solution instead of just being obstructionist. We have spoken with Russ Stevenson about this. We have spoken with Michael Moore, attended meetings with Susan and with Mary to discuss how we can continue to have a role in this in a constructive way. We have got together with some of the Oaks and Spokes members and workshopped some alternatives that we would like to consider putting forward as things move on with this. So getting into the details of all our alternatives, we felt that the plan as it was presented takes away from the current facilities downtown for bicycles. It does not provide a clear path for returning those. And the plan for the bicycle network, the resulting bicycle network at the long-term plan, we didn't feel was localized enough and leveraged conditions that they exist instead of considering how the conditions may be engineered to exist as we need them to be for our town. In our workshop and with our discussion with several stakeholders, we have been advised that focus is the way to go. So instead of broadcasting a system, a network of facilities across downtown and saying that every other street should have some kind of facility, and it very well should at the end of the process be very ubiquitous, but to get something on the ground that we need to choose something and focus on making a connection, getting something on the ground and building our network. And so Oaks and Spokes representatives and some of the council folks we talked to, we've come to the idea of using this as an opportunity to connect our greenway trails through downtown on a accessible, safe network. So we have greenway trails planned to come down to, what's the name of the park? That starts with a D. Devereaux Park. And that will come down and connect to one of the connections we're just looking into along Harrington. And that would connect to the Walnut Creek Greenway Trail to the south. So we would have two north-south routes. One would be on the east side of the train tracks. And we're not focusing on a particular street. We're just saying that we need a corridor. There needs to be a north-south corridor that connects these greenway trails. And we discussed a lot how folks can be resistant to change. People don't like seeing their parking being taken away. If we talk about this as bringing the greenway trails through downtown, I think that we can address a lot of those concerns because folks love their greenway trails, and it's one of our shining features of our city. And who can argue with taking our comprehensive, nation-leading greenway trail and bringing it into our vibrant downtown? We also need to establish an east-west corridor. We had some issues with how, was it going to be Morgan Street? Morgan Street it wasn't Morgan Street, it was getting turned into Martin Street. Martin Street is going to be an auto-dominated corridor. There's lots of potential for discussion as this goes forward. We didn't come up with a singular solution. We would like to push this idea of connecting the Greenway Trails through downtown and focusing on a select set of corridors to advance instead of broadcasting our efforts over a larger set of options. Those options still be on the table and should still be in the plan, but maybe they'd be lower in priority to what we want to see go in. As far as what we can do going forward, we voted no, and that went to council. And so we've asked a few people, like, how do we have a voice in this going forward? And we've been told, well, you've expressed your view. This is like, you did not agree with this plan, and the council is now aware of this. So the way that we continue to have a voice is just to continue to show up and be a part of the process. We now have Mary Sell is one of the members of the stakeholder committee. Mary, what's the official name of that committee? Do you know?
Something BRT.
Okay, something BRT.
BRT stakeholder committee.
So we'll have an ongoing voice in those discussions, and we will have a chance to update the Bike Raleigh plan going forward, which will have a chance to let us integrate and coordinate with the folks involved with the downtown Raleigh plan. Our proposed plan of work includes coordination with the stakeholders on this issue. And I don't think that we have any official action that we need to take now to move forward.
We do.
We do.
We have to make an action at this meeting to move it forward to the bicycle subcommittee
Yes.
so that we can coalesce.
Yes, we need to bring it into the subcommittee, and we'll move to do so, but we're not looking to create a motion or have a plan to pass at this time. We would like to send the issue to the bicycle subcommittee to continue to coordinate this work and Mary Sell's work on the stakeholder committee.
But do we need an action to formally move that to the bicycle subcommittee?
Yeah, because technically the commission's already acted. It's not a live item.
So just if you.
So, are there any questions? Should we have a discussion about this before I make this motion?
As you know, we've talked about this repeatedly. We are not satisfied that we've seen all of the information needed for full BPAC endorsement as it relates to the pedestrian realm in this downtown plan, not a BRT plan, a downtown transportation plan, driven largely by BRT, which is clear. So depending on what the kind of end result is, I certainly think that there are opportunities to make the bicycle recommendations of that plan stronger. I'm unclear what ways there are to make the pedestrian recommendations of the plan stronger. And until that happens, I don't feel like this commission is in a place where we can fully endorse the plan. We can make it better. I mean, we've already taken our action, and it sounds like that
We
might
already
be it.
didn't.
And to the extent that staff and the consultant team is willing to entertain and coordinate with us on the pedestrian recommendations, I'd welcome that as well. But until that time, it seems like bicycle is the way to move forward. But I would like you to bring it back, when you all are ready, to bring it back to the full commission so that we can understand how that mode also impacts pedestrians as well.
I fully agree that the plan is lacking on the pedestrian front, and frankly, I don't see the foothold to get into it to start working on it. Like, it's because it's not there yet.
It's absent.
But we're not working to make an endorsement at this point. Like, I think that ship sailed. And what we do now is we work on the individual plans as they come out of this program.
Sure, yeah. I mean, my only request would be that once you all have finished with your recommendations, which I generally support, that we have a chance as a full commission to review it, just to ensure that you all are doing what I think you're already going to do, which is not adversely impact pedestrians to benefit bicyclists.
Sure.
To me, you know, we are arguing over limited right-of-way when really we could have a holistic view of transportation networks as interrelated and taking the entire right-of-way.
And I have a very focused view of how I get around town.
Sure.
So I'm going to need a lot of help and a lot of input. Like, we're not going to drive this by ourselves, so.
Right.
Awesome, thank you.
And I have a need for more information. I mean, maybe I don't fully understand how greenways work, but why would anyone want a greenway downtown?
They can safely get to a destination and not get hit by a car.
Oh, so they get what now?
So they could safely get to a destination and not get hit by a car, like all ages and abilities, like, or so my child could safely.
Aren't
get-
greenways meant to, what, more privacy or like it's a, I don't know, peace?
So yeah, the greenways were originally developed as parks within the
Yeah.
city. They are increasingly used as transportation. And there are some studies out there that I've read that some of the corridors have a significant portion of their traffic is people getting back and forth to work. The folks that live over across Glenwood from Crabtree Valley Mall, there's really heavy foot traffic for the people that work at the mall going back and forth on that Greenway Trail. And
Okay.
there is a debate about this issue because there is a contingent that has that exact reaction that will say, and this will be a debate going forward. The greenways are for nature, and the greenways are
Well,
for
yeah,
quiet.
that's what my mind and heart are telling me. That's for nature. Well, I'll await your.
I
Don't
used
need
them
to
to get here
prescribe that
today.
it's a greenway either. Just
Right.
prescribe that it's a tier 1 bicycle facility, which would traditionally be an above curb. And, we've been talking about it as an urban greenway segment more as a branding than
Okay.
a actual facility. So what that facility would look like could be really
But
anything.
personally, I would love to be able to go for a walk in nature and then stroll downtown and have a cup of coffee and come back. I think that we can integrate it. We are the city of Oaks. We're the city in a park. And so there's nothing that's paradoxical about talking about bringing some of our parks downtown.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, were you going to make a motion?
I would like to move that the BPAC vote to task the bicycle planning subcommittee with continuing to coordinate with Go Raleigh on the downtown transportation plan. Is that right, Mary? Did we get that good? Good enough.
Second.
Okay, we have first, second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, you have more on your work plan, sir.
What was my next bit?
You still going?
Yeah, he's got stuff.
I had the BRT vote, and what was my next one? I'm sorry, I lost my notes.
Maybe that was it.
I think that was it. I think we're going to talk about the work plan, but that's
We're
not
going to talk
part of
about
my
work plan,
report.
yeah. So you have been talking about work plan, but that's a whole separate item. That's not your report. All right, so Bicycle Planning Committee has been busy. Let's talk about the Community Outreach Committee. What's been going on there?
We did not meet this month.
No.
We did not, but that means, I think later on in the agenda, I'm not sure if I read it or not. Take a look back. We're going to talk about Walktober planning with Paul, so which we do need to discuss. It is now August, so if we're going to do Walktober, we need to reach out to our community partners. We did a really fun one with the cemetery, Oakwood Cemetery, which was awesome. And Susan, you did a wonderful sustainability downtown tour, which was really good. And so we need to discuss if we want to do these walks again. So yes, that is something we can do, and I guess we can do that later on.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Walktober at a later date. Pedestrian Planning Committee.
We have also been busy working with staff and transportation planning to look at the prioritization and the scoring methodology for scoring for the prioritization of streetscape projects. Is that streetscape project? Is that the technical term? So a question I had was like, what's the difference between streetscape projects and other sidewalk projects? And these are generally commercial corridors where this is not just a sidewalk project, but a overall streetscape project. So street trees, lighting, street furnitures and amenities, often coordinated with road improvements, and maybe even changes to commercial development. So think about like Hillsborough Street, Fayetteville Street. You could see these throughout Blunt Street and Person Street eventually could be something like this. And so we looked at the list of streets, is the list complete? So that was one question we had. And then worked closely with staff to tweak their scoring methodology to include a way to score equity impact of these projects. Staff had a really good idea about using a scoring methodology that Wake County has been using. and seems to be fairly accepted by the city of Raleigh as well. So I think this is going to be a kind of two-step review by the full commission. The first one is looking at that methodology and the list of overall projects. And then next month, once staff has had a chance to refine the scoring, we'll be looking at the actual ranked list according to the scoring methodology if we approve that tonight. Otherwise, if we have tweaks to this, they will take that and revise as appropriate and bring it back to us. And they had a note, which I thought was an important one, which is the prioritization list is made by council, right? So we would be supporting a methodology and a list of projects to be scored, but the actual ranking of them could change based on a number of political factors or citizen input, so.
Yeah, if I can add to that. So, I mean, what the staff does is we provide a defensible mechanism by which we can rank all these projects. How do you decide one baby is more important than the other? They're all important projects to somebody, but there has to be some way that we decide which projects have the most benefit and the most bang for your buck. So we provide the commission and the city council with a mechanism by which to be able to rate and rank those projects. At the end of the day, the city council can ultimately say, thank you very much. We like project number 15. We think that should be our highest priority based on other considerations. And that's council's ultimate prerogative as the decider on these. So, but what you've got in front of you are two elements. One is the color sheet that has the scoring methodology. And so what this shows is what's on the left-hand side is what's been recommended by the committee. On the right-hand side is what the existing scoring methodology is. And this methodology is adopted by the city council as a means of how we rank projects. But you can go through and see some of the changes on that in terms of what's proposed from 2019 to what we already have in place. The second thing that you have is a handout that is the draft streetscape project list. So this is the universe of candidate projects. So as you see, I believe we have, 48 candidate projects. And so we've updated this. We've gotten rid of some projects that have been completed or otherwise already programmed. For example, the Oberlin Road Streetscape project is a funded capital project now, so it's not on this list. Hillsborough phases 1 and 2 are complete, so they're not on this list. What we've tried to do is to pull together things that are prior projects that were identified through other processes, and also to pull together recommendations that have come out of small area plans and corridor plans relative to streetscapes. And as I always tell people, a streetscape project isn't building a new sidewalk in most cases, although it can. There's nothing that prohibits that. It's really about refurbishing existing pedestrian spaces and making it more pedestrian focused. And I think the Oberlin Road Streetscape project is a very good example of that, where we're making some fairly comprehensive changes to the street, looking at adding on-street parking, looking at adding furniture. So the things that we would recommend for the commission at this point is to actually not take action. I know that everyone's getting this cold at the table this evening. The committee meeting was last week. Our suggestion is that you actually put this out and allow for some public feedback to be sought for your next meeting. And we want to get feedback on the ranking criteria and then feedback on do we have the projects captured correctly? And then once we get that feedback, then we would go through a cycle where we would rank the projects based on any changes and then come back with those recommendations at a subsequent meeting. Does that capture that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And one thing we also discussed was this is a really extensive list, and these are very expensive, complicated, high visibility projects. And so while we want to ensure that our scoring methodology is correct, it matters less what is number 27 versus number 28, and really what your kind of top five-ish are, because by the time those have been funded and implemented under our current funding allocation, we'll be back to discussing methodology again, and the environment will have changed such that some of these there might be new ones on the list, or some of them might have fallen off and have been taken care of by private development.
And what's important is there was an allocation from the 2017 transportation bond specifically for streetscape implementation. So what's important from this is that that top five that we come out with from this ranking process, assuming that it's endorsed by the city council, that then becomes our implementation priority, and we have money available to do that implementation work.
Do you remember what amount was funded?
I want to say it was a total 4 million. I believe that's right.
And just for a frame of reference, how much does one of these projects cost?
It depends.
Depends widely.
Yeah, because these are all scalable. So,
Yeah. Like, how much is Oberlin?
the Oberlin project, I want to say, is, because there's some utility work that's been added in that, I want to say it's in the 4 million plus range right now. By comparison, Hillsborough Street Phase 2 alone was 20 million.
Right.
You know, but that had
Hillsborough Street Phase 1 was
heavy.
15 million.
Phase 1 came in just under 10. But Phase 2 had so much heavy utility work, both underground and above ground. That's one of the things that escalated the price on that project.
So that 4 million is just
That's
a
kind of order of
bonus?
magnitude.
That's not inclusive of all funding then for streetscaping, is it?
That is
'Cause that would
currently
be one
for
project.
new streetscaping projects. And
Okay.
whether that's $1 million per year for 4 small projects, or if
Okay.
that's all 4 million getting together into a single project, that's to be determined.
Okay.
What it also doesn't prevent us from doing, in the case of an Oberlin streetscape project, is for us to fund that project independently in the
Right.
capital improvement program.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. Like if this wasn't inclusive of all funding sources for streetscaping.
We also have the
Primary
ability to be
funding
able to go after external grant funding sources through the MPO, for example. That's an option as well.
Do we need to have discussion on this?
Yeah, what
this
do we
evening,
need to
Eric?
do
Any
now?
questions?
I was going to ask you, Elizabeth, has the committee reviewed the scoring methodology that's summarized here? And it is our role to make recommendations going forward, and does the committee recommend?
So we
Anything about these?
heard from staff last week on this. Robert and I were in attendance. Kelly was unable to be there, but we have discussed this previously. I don't want to speak for them, but I feel confident in the amendments they've made. And did we vote last Thursday? I can't remember if it's in the minutes or not.
I believe there was agreement between
Yeah,
Mr. Parrish
Robert
and
and I,
Ms.
yeah.
Alley that you were comfortable with that approach of making that recommendation to the commission.
Comfortable enough to bring it to you all for your consideration.
That's true.
That's right. And so I would say that our conversation, again, focused on how to include equity into the scoring, knowing that economic development target areas, which was kind of the closest metric in the prior scoring, doesn't necessarily fully encompass equity priorities that the city has, and that also many of our area plan work can also happen in communities that are perhaps more affluent than the city as a whole. And so my concern that if we were prioritizing projects that were coming out of area plans, while it is very important for us to implement our area plans, it could be almost putting lower income areas in kind of a double jeopardy where they're not getting the points for that. And so they're also falling lower on the list of streetscapes. Right. So incorporating this score from the Wake County Community Vulnerability, which you'll see at the bottom of this color page, adds 3 points to the scoring matrix. And to me, I thought that was an excellent change.
So if I should have asked my question better, that the committee recommends the commission endorse these methodologies.
Yes. Do you all have any further comment on that, Robert or Kelly?
No. And I believe our suggestion was, since the commission's getting this cold and it's not had any opportunity for any sort of public review, that the commission hold it over until the next meeting and see if there's any feedback on the methodology or on the list of projects.
Okay, so tonight is just for information,
Yes.
and we'll
As
talk
the
about it
committee
again
report.
next month.
And so if the commission were to take action, we would be authorizing staff to advertise this for public comment at our next BPAC meeting for it to be on the agenda, and to score the projects contained in this list based on this updated methodology and bring us that list.
Does anyone feel comfortable moving forward with this, or do we feel we do need time to review what we've been given?
We would encourage you to hold it at this point.
Yeah, I just want to see if anybody was concerned that we were holding it, because it is a lot of information, I think.
It is,
So I
very much.
appreciate that you gave us a heads up, that it wasn't in our packet, so it would be difficult, I think, to take action on it this evening. All right, what else? Sounds like a lot.
That was the bulk of our conversation for the past 2 months. We know we have Walktober coming up in October. excited to partner with Outreach Committee and staff to make that a success. And pending adoption of our work program by City Council, we'll be moving on to looking at leading pedestrian intervals, audible pedestrian signals, and then eventually the design of curb ramps.
Yeah.
And that is my report.
Excellent. All right. Anybody have anything else for committee and member reports? We will move on to old business. It does not, we added work plan, but bicycles parking standards are on the list. Are we doing that this evening?
No, we are not. My suggestion on that one is, why don't we send that to the Bicycle Planning Committee? And perhaps having availability to sit down with planning staff during the day with the committee meeting would be useful.
Be kind to staff.
Okay. So,
I move that we send the bicycle parking standards issue to the Bicycle Planning Committee.
Seconded.
all right. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There you go, Dwight, you got some more work on your,
Thank you, Dwight.
your work plan's looking pretty.
You need another member on your committee, Dwight.
I need a vacation plan.
Yeah, exactly. You have a rather rigorous work plan. We appreciate that. Okay, so we did make a motion at the beginning to amend the agenda. That is difficult to say, Mr. Otwell, to discuss the work plan. As I mentioned, I think there's been a lot of conversations going around about this, and I think as a group, we've talked about being a little more focused. So we talked about what are your top 3, I think last month or the month before or whatever. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I believe that the biggest concern is that we become much more focused and much more dedicated to the things that the city and the council are currently doing. So we were advised to remove certain words and remove certain things that really are a little bit outside of our purview. It's more wording and things like that. But we were also advised to, really try to focus on the things that where we could really be advising and making recommendation. And one of the major issues right now is, of course, bus rapid transit. What have I not said, Dwight? How else would you summarize what came out of our meeting with?
So we met with a bunch of folks about all this. We met former BPAC members. We communicated with Sig Hutchinson. We hadn't met with him yet, but we've talked to council members and we've spoken with Michael Moore about this issue. And the last meeting we had was with Kay Crowder, and we'd spent the bulk of our time talking about this plan of work. And she said she had some specific issues that she wanted to tweak, and it doesn't really affect the nature of our work very much. It's just she wants to make sure that the way that we're thinking about our work is aligned with the visions and goals of the city council. And so I said, we can make these tweaks and come to your committee, but is this also a chance to do a little bit broader of an update to bring you something that you think would be more effective? Because she had given us a lot of general guidelines as well, instead of just specific points that she needed changed. So what we have done is try to incorporate some of those larger changes. And she has said that if we can agree on a plan of work tonight as a commission and send it to her to the Transportation Committee next week, she says she can do her best to keep any other comments from being brought back on us by the other committee members at that Transportation and Transit Committee, in which case they could recommend that our unadulterated work plan go directly to council at its next meeting and then be fast-tracked for approval. If we can't come up with something tonight, then we can go workshop with them next week, but then we're going to have to come back to the BPAC and have a discussion about whether we like that new language and how we want to tweak it. Depending on how big those changes are, we could spend some time going back and forth with the Transportation and Transit Committee to get it nailed out. And the longer we go without a plan of work, the more tenuous our position becomes. So what we would like to do tonight is go over these changes that we've introduced, and it doesn't change what we want to do with our work. And I've not foisted changes upon any committee that hadn't had a chance to deal with it yet. So we've looked at the general comments and the bicycle stuff, and she loved the outreach committee. It was concise. It was short.
She wants
She didn't have any comments, so you guys are all off the hook.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
I'm on the hook.
So is bicycle.
I'm working on it right now.
Yeah, so If that's okay with the rest of the commission and with staff, if that follows all the rules properly, then we would like to proceed with going over our recommended edits to the plan of work.
All right. Do you have a handout of your recommended changes?
I can send it to you right now, and we can put it up on the screen. But no, we were working and shopping this until right before the meeting. So we would have to compile this as we go. Is that going to be possible? I have it all written here, but it's not neatly formatted.
Do you have a flash drive?
I do, yes. You want to do it now?
I have one as well.
That would be workable.
Well, I was able to, while he's doing that, I was just going to say, I was able to kind of review the overall general commission initiatives, and I feel that the first 2, 4, 5 bullets and the last bullet could perhaps all be combined to create one statement about assisting, coordinating, and working on particular initiatives, and then having a list of listing them. I'm not sure if that's what you guys had talked about. I feel that I really like the recommendation that we specifically mention participating, advising, and coordinating on bus rapid transit initiatives, because I do think that's where we could have a lot of input in the next couple of years. I do like the idea of keeping Vision Zero as its own item, and I like the idea of keeping Parks, Recreation, Greenway Advisory Board promoting that bullet. So what I kind of did is shortened it to 4 kind of bullets that would kind of capture that. I don't know how, Dwight, you guys in your workshopping of that topic felt about that. You'd gotten it down to 3 bullets, I think.
We did basically the same thing. We went through and categorized all of the different items, and it tends to fall under staff reports, policy recommendations, and outreach.
Okay.
And so we've tried to craft 3 bullet points for the general section, and I think we came down to 3 as well. You said you had 4, but you wanted to keep Vision Zero as a separate one, so
Yeah,
we can get into these details.
It doesn't have to, but I just sort of felt like that. I think that's an initiative that we need to be much more active on, and I'm a little concerned if that wording gets lost somewhere else, it could be watered down. But I wouldn't be opposed to that either. So do we think there's a way to project this? My screen is not on, so I can look behind us. So
This one's not on?
yeah.
Yes, given, I don't know if we need, well, that was not on the whole time, was it? No.
I've been on.
No, it's not been on at all. Maybe it was just never turned on.
There it is.
Password in case you need it.
Well, but the others are working, so I'm not sure it has anything to do with that.
Whether it's on.
Oh, he turned it
No,
on.
the screen wasn't
Our
on.
friends at RT.
I think it'll project as soon as it's on.
Do you mind if I come up here and drive this computer and we can go over the spreadsheet?
Thank you, Eric.
I'm wordsmithing pedestrian as we speak, and following your lead in consolidating to 2 big bullets. One would be reviewing and providing input on the Raleigh Streets Handbook update and various corridor and master plan studies.
Right, well, I would think anything that's reviewing could actually probably, studies plan,
They all fall under
yeah.
that, so in the guidance to be succinct, I think that that doesn't eliminate any of these items that we had listed separately.
Right.
They all fall under those.
Right.
And then coordinating outreach activities.
Okay.
All right, so here were the bullet points that we combined down for the general. Can you guys read these? And Susan, I'd like to know how well these
You're hovering, yeah, okay.
match with what you're doing.
So Susan,
my
it sounds like you had much more, you had kept those last 2 bullets where we had condensed them just into receiving reports and data from staff on programs and initiatives.
I think that the concern that I might have on this is the lack of you do have advisory recommendations there.
There was another point that she made specifically to you and me, that we had to take the word advocate. We are an advisory committee.
We are not to
advocate
advocate.
in this role.
And we're also not to direct things we're not supposed to direct or name
Well,
numbers
the biggest
we're not
issue
supposed to
that Kay
name.
Crowder had with our work plan was that she said, in her words, she says, I'm very sensitive about staff time. And so I want to make sure that you guys aren't needlessly spending staff time. And so most of the issues that she had were with work items that would allow us a free hand in commandeering staff time. Like one of the issues was identify other boards and commissions in the city for possible coordination. And it's very general, and it allows us to like call up whatever staff member across Raleigh that we want and say like, hey, we need to talk to your group. We're going to have a presentation. So that was one of the specifics that she had issues with as part of her larger concern of avoiding overburdening staff. So that's what these consolidations were made in consideration of for the most part.
Well, how many bullet points are there? Because I'm not able to.
I apologize. Let me read through these. Okay. So our original work plan was here, and I condensed these or categorized them into events, awards, reports, recommendations. And so everything that falls on this list should be able to be interpreted as falling under one of these 3 bullet points, and I'll read these bullet points for you. Bullet point 1, promote and coordinate and participate in events related to bicycle and pedestrian issues.
Okay.
Bullet point number 2, receive, report, and data. We might need to fix that because reports should be reports. Receive reports and data from staff on programs and initiatives pertaining to bicycle and pedestrian topics and make advisory recommendations. Bullet point 3, promote equitable access to safe and comfortable pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure for all Raleigh communities. We wanted to add a bit about equity in there since we've had time to consider.
Yeah.
So if you will allow me, I will go through these points. So this is an event that we are coordinating, promoting. They coordinate and participate in the annual Triangle Bicycle and Pedestrian Workshop, can be covered under bullet point 1. Promote the city's application for walk-friendly community designation. Did we decide to just strike that, I think? Like we were talking about designations and awards, and we were not certain that that needs to be as part of our work plan. If staff would like us.
Staff's work plan.
Yeah. If staff would like us to promote that, then we are equipped and it is in our work plan to support staff, but I don't think that that needs to be part of our particular work plan. So that doesn't get under a bullet, it just gets thrown out. And the same thing for the bronze level bike friendly designation. Receive quarterly reports on bicycle and pedestrian crash data is included under bullet point number 2, receive reports and data. Okay. Stay in touch with the Raleigh Police Liaison is reported under bullet point number 2, because the police, do they really count as city staff, or is that a separate bucket altogether?
Their staff.
They're staff. They probably don't want to be called staff. All right, this is one that I highlighted in yellow because it was one that Kay Crowder specifically called out as having an issue with. I think this has been reworded here. The bullet point is coordinate access to transit initiatives with Go Raleigh and Go Triangle to promote sidewalk and bus stop amenity improvements and receive ongoing updates on transit planning. And so Kay Crowder had an issue with this bullet point. She feels that this is the RTA's scope and authority, and that this is not really, this is one where she specifically said BPAC does not need to be considering this item in this specific way. So this is one that I don't think can really get, did we save this one, or did we
I think we made an effort to include language in the bicycle component of our work plan that was specific to coordination.
Yes. So I think that this is going to be taken out of the general list. It was problematic. I couldn't really see a way to word it to address her concern, but I do think we can address the underlying concerns that we have through different bullet points in the bike, pedestrian, and the bicycle planning point where we're coordinating with.
Can I ask, what was her problem with it? I mean, it seems to me that we ought to be in communication with them in some respect.
We are, and we have members on the stakeholder committee with these conversations going forward. So she
just thinks it's beyond our scope, is that it?
If I had to, I'm sorry, I'm not going to speak for her because we
Oh,
did not
what?
really go into detail. I'm not sure why she said she thought this was the scope of the RTA, but she
Well,
was very,
yeah.
for this point, she
Yeah,
said
well,
this is
she
the scope
felt
of the
that,
RTI.
she felt that we should reword that to more like participate, advise, and work on the bus rapid transit initiatives. So I don't think I completely read it that we should get rid of that bullet altogether, as much as we should make it very specific to the fact that the city of Raleigh has already made a commitment to pursue bus rapid transit, and we're going to make we're going to participate in that, we're going to advise, and it will be bus rapid transit. So
that-
that's why
that
I
sounds
felt
good.
like we should keep the words bus rapid transit,
Yeah.
and I felt we should keep the words Vision Zero. The coordination with Parks and Recreation, I don't think we 100% have to do that one as a separate bullet, but I felt like,
I mean, it's things like, I remember a previous meeting, I think it was Minnesota, that had bike lanes beside bus stops, and, really? Yeah, I kind of think advise is good, or participate, yeah.
We're not proposing that we drop this issue.
Okay.
So we have Mary Sell is on the committee that discusses this issue with Go Raleigh going forward. And
Well, I like the language that Susan had, that's what I'm saying.
so the chance to approve or not approve this plan is gone. And the opportunity for us to engage going forward is as the individual elements of that plan come forward, they will be brought before us as they pertain to bike and pedestrian issues.
So maybe let's have a discussion on if it's too generic, that bullet that we had, that was, bullet 2, because we did make it much more generic in order to include all of these different staff, like the Go Raleigh or the Parks and Rec. So let's look at our bullet 2 and see if it doesn't, if we feel like we need to add more specificity to feel
Right.
comfortable.
Well, what I heard from the conversation was, there's just way too many words here, just really what is it you should be doing, and you should be advising us on what we're doing. So I think that the words bus rapid transit should really not be obscured from the overall commission, because I think that implies it's a bicycle problem, and
It is not.
And it is not, right. So I think it's not exclusively a bicycle problem. So I think that in this, one of these should contain, being a participant. She mentioned, she goes, I'm hoping you all are going to go to all these public meetings. I hope you're all going to be watching everything that's going on and making recommendations and making public comment on this stuff for us. Because, we have a lot of expertise in this, at this table. So I think,
But is it just public comment, or does she want the commission and our commission capacity to engage with that? I'm a
That is
little
a question I
confused on
have as
that.
well. One thing that we have talked about in my short tenure on the commission is whether items come before us and what the kind of protocol is for what comes to BPAC and what doesn't come to BPAC, and when, how often, and what the expected outcome is. Is it a vote? Is it a FYI? And I don't know how that fits into our work program. But, much of our meetings is often taken with us hearing from staff or consultant teams. And I don't know how our work program can drive which items come before us or not, or to the best of my knowledge, there is no formal policy of what does and doesn't come to BPAC in terms of city initiatives.
So the commission has historically had broad range to write a work plan. And again, the council not approving the work plan is unprecedented, both for the commission and for other boards and commissions, from what I know. So there's no roadmap here. That being said, the city council has the ability to take any recommendations from the commission and say, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, we want to modify this. So that is completely their right.
So I guess an example I would give is would it be appropriate for our work program to say, we will be reviewing, I'll give a past example, the Dorothea Dix Master Plan, or going forward the BRT plan, the Western Boulevard Corridor Plan, the North Capitol Plan. Are those, do we need to be as specific as we will review these plans? And thereby saying,
right,
they will be brought to us?
If something's not on the work plan, or the city council doesn't refer an item to the commission has no license to work on it.
Right.
But if you're going to bring up something, for example, like Dorothea Dix, I think from the commission's standpoint and what the commission's purview is per the bylaws, it really focuses on access to Dix. It focuses on the perimeter and how the transportation infrastructure connects to the park. I don't think, based on charge, that reviewing the actual layout of Dorothea Dix and the internal circulation of a park plan, that would not be in the purview, because that historically has been Parks
It
Recommended
might be a
Advisory
bad
Board.
example, but I guess my question is, how would it have been determined that that plan should come to us? We didn't ask for it to come to us. It was on our agenda. And so I don't know if they asked to present to us, if you as
Or it's staff-led.
transportation planning staff asked for them to present to us, if council told them to present to us, and whether or not those, what ends up being are really meaty discussions and really our imprint on city policy, whether or not that needs to be reflected in our work program.
Sure, and in that specific instance, that was the Parks and Recreation staff seeking input from multiple boards.
I see, okay.
Well,
But there was no recourse if they hadn't, other than staff,
Right.
or than a council being able to.
right, and I think that's some of the concern that I've had about trying to shorten the thing too much. Frankly, I didn't know anyone read it. I didn't know that, I mean, to me, this is a bit of a bureaucratic exercise. I would love for it to be a very concise and driving document for what we do, but like you, I'm not 100% sure that it always is. I think we react to a lot of things more than proactively do things. And that is why I feel it is very important for Vision Zero and Bus Rapid Transit to be one of the bullets, two separate bullets perhaps under the General Commission initiatives. But, other than that, perhaps, the idea of all those other things we do maybe really are covered in your bullets. But those two things make me extremely nervous to lose the focus. And I guess what I believe that Council Member Crowder was sort of telling us is that every year our work plan should state what it is that's happening now. And whether that's something we want to happen or whether that's something Council is making happen. I think that our opinion is valued, and I think we bring a lot to the table. But I think if we start making it that general, I worry that we're not going to be able to make any progress on Vision Zero, and I worry that we've already not approved the downtown portion of the BRT. Are we going to be brought future portions of the BRT as it moves forward? So I want us to, that's what I got from the thing. Generalize the general, specify the specifics. And to me, the specifics are Vision Zero and Bus Rapid Transit. And all the rest of it is kind of like.
I'm happy with that. And Michael Moore, when we met with him, said that his ideal work plan looks like several general things, like receive public input, make general policy recommendations, and then have some specifics, some meaty specifics that you want to spend your time digging into. So I think it would be perfectly appropriate to leave the Go Raleigh item in there. I think Kay had recommended some language about, instead of saying coordinate access to transit initiatives.
I don't care about the benches, the shelters, the bike rack. Those are sort of going to be standardized by someone other than us.
Right, by the bus folks, but to her point.
Right.
So I was just going to say, I feel like this last bullet that says review and advise for the downtown Raleigh transportation plan, which specifies our bicycle functions, not as much as the pedestrian. So I think we could amend that to include the pedestrian and add the word BRT, and that could be our bullet versus the fifth one. You know what I mean?
I like that better.
Right, and it won't say the downtown Raleigh transportation plan.
It could
It'll
just
say
say BRT.
It'll just say Bus Rapid Transit.
Or just transit, right? Because we
Well,
want to
it
interface
should-
with transit.
That's the next point, I mean, that's the
Yeah.
next point. Should it really only say Bus Rapid Transit?
Probably should have said transit.
Wherever the Bus Rapid Transit hits, I think that there's the opportunity for a lot of missed opportunities for other transportation modes to be connecting, whether
Right.
that's transit, whether that's
So
bicycles.
this
whether
work
that's
plan
whatever
also
it is.
limits us and what we can do, but it does not in any way coerce Go Raleigh to give us stuff that they weren't planning on giving us anyway.
So let's workshop that final bullet to include pedestrian focus as well,
Okay,
and
so-
modify, just review and advise with transit planning with focus on funding and implementation of bicycle network, pedestrian facilities. You know what I mean? Does that?
Okay. plus
Probably so,
pedestrians.
yes.
I think you probably can remove.
Can we take out downtown loop trail?
I think so.
Okay.
Just- And promote equal access. Well, and then remove that too, because that's a separate bullet up
Yep,
anyway.
okay.
Well, it's not the downtown Raleigh plan.
That ship sailed.
Downtown.
That's, we're done. We've finished
Right,
it.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying, modify that to say review and advise
Implementation.
with transit,
The implementation of the downtown.
implementation or
No,
just
it's not,
transit in general.
it's
2020.
Coordination with transit.
They approved the plan, but it's not been implemented yet, correct?
Yeah, but it's a lot bigger than the downtown transportation plan. There's all these other corridors.
The New Bern Avenue corridor and
Right.
beyond downtown.
And, you know, Western, all these other corridors are coming, and I think that we should be at the table.
Downtown transportation and BRT plan?
Yeah, review and advise transit department or, trying to incorporate
Yeah.
transit planning with focus on funding and implementation of bicycle network pedestrian facilities. What did it
Sorry.
say?
And DRBT and BRT?
What, review and advise, what's DRTP?
Downtown Raleigh Transportation Plan.
Oh, okay.
I'm not writing all that out.
With focus on funding and implementation of the bicycle network and pedestrian.
I say keep it shorter. I say just say participate and advise on the bus rapid transit initiatives.
Yeah.
And it could say, it doesn't have to be bus rapid transit, it could just say transit initiatives. I think it should say BRT and other transit initiatives, maybe.
But if you say transit initiatives, I think that encompasses it all.
Probably.
Am I right?
Probably.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to say BRT, does it?
I mean, transit initiatives, yeah.
Yeah, right. And then if you add a bullet about keeping the Vision Zero, I'll be a happy camper.
So, I don't think we need Vision Zero. I don't think that's going to come from here.
I disagree.
Okay, then we can keep it. There's no reason not to have it.
I think if it doesn't come from here, I'm afraid it will never come. And if maybe, we can argue about whether it's Vision Zero or it's something else like
Right.
Vision Zero.
It's been on our work plan for several years now, and there's not been any work forward on it as far as I'm aware. It's an item that appears before council year after year that we say we're going to work on, and nothing happens.
I'm hoping that's going to change.
All right.
Also,
And I think if we take it off the list, we've lost any ability to make it an emphasis.
But we can advise on bicycle and pedestrian policy per our general thing. Bullet point number 2. Receive reports. I guess it's not a program. I guess you're right. Because it's not a program yet.
Big creation of a program.
It's a short bullet.
So I'm not, yeah, I don't.
And
wanna
Kay
fight
didn't
about
have a
that one,
specific
but,
problem
yeah,
with
that's
it,
good.
right?
Yep.
So I would just include that bullet as is.
Yep, and Kay didn't have any problems with that. So we're going to strike this. Vision Zero is going to stay. And you
I
said
wouldn't
you
even
wanted
say
to-
work with the city of Raleigh to move toward, I would just say, I cross a lot of that out. I said, work toward implementation of Vision Zero policy.
I think the language you've used in other sections is promote.
Okay, good point.
That's probably consistent.
But not advocate. Yes.
promote, participate.
Yes, I like the idea that, yeah,
So what are we saying?
just say promote, I think it's
Promote,
fine for
yeah,
this one,
yeah.
but.
That's a safe word.
Okay.
Do we know
Promote.
if that made it into the comp plan? That was our recommendation. Speaking of promote.
What's that?
We recommended that a
I think we
Vision
did.
Zero policy statement be added to the comp plan. draft.
Yes, we sure did, and that's why I don't want to let go of
I
it.
hope it made it. It
I'd love
hasn't
to
been
find
adopted
out.
yet, has it?
Has not been adopted. Individual chapters of the comprehensive plan are now starting to make their way to the city council table after planning commission review.
Fantastic. I'll look it up, see where we are.
So we had our 3 bullet points. And we were also going to include bullet points for Vision Zero and participate and advise in BRT and other transit initiatives.
Transit and planning initiatives?
Transit
I like that.
Planning initiatives?
and planning
Not a bad idea.
Well, I mean, they overlap so much in corridor planning specifically.
Something that the Kay Crowder might want us to include here would be some sort of limiting language about
Bicycle and pedestrian.
as it pertains to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
Then just put that as it pertains to that?
Yeah.
Or do you think it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I think that's a blanket
I mean,
statement for
perhaps this is
everyone.
what would want to be limited, but to me, land use impacts pedestrian and bicyclists, perhaps more than infrastructure,
Very
but that's
good
my
point.
planner's bias.
Here.
So yes or no to limiting language?
Let's try
No.
putting it as is. It's concise and
It's
we
under
can
the BPAC
qualify as
agenda.
needed.
How's everybody feeling about what do we have, 5 bullets?
Yeah.
Main bullets?
I think that's real good.
I feel good
Doesn't
about it.
actively drive our agenda.
Fine with that.
There was discussion in the committee about making sure that equity wording is included. Where is that going to be now?
That's
Its
bullet
own
3.
bullet.
Promote
Okay.
equitable access to safe and
That's
comfortable.
my answer. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah.
No problem. This is fun stuff.
So did you also get through the bicycle planning committee?
We made it through bicycle planning committee. All right. We were going to change the language of our first bullet to update the Bike Raleigh plan, investigate current implementation, and make bicycle and policy recommendations. That should say bicycle policy recommendations. And we're going to strike these 2,
Sub-bullets.
these 3, because they are implied under the first bullet point. And with the next bullet point, work with the Urban Trails and Greenway Parks Advisory Board to coordinate the City of Raleigh Park Department, and my typos are horrible today, 2019 Greenway Master Plan programmatic synergies.
I think that's great. My only comment is that really a function of only the bicycle planning committee? I think that's a little bit limiting by having that one there, but.
But the first bullet where or the second bullet in the top, that identifies broadly that we want to work and coordinate with other
You're saying the general
departments.
commission one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You think that
You're
encompasses
probably
that?
right.
And in just making things work and limiting the number of people involved to focus on the good interface with the different advisory board, I think we'd always relegated this to the bicycle planning committee, who would then bring forward to the commission anything that needed to be voted on. So I don't think we miss the focus here if we just keep this within a bicycle planning
Okay.
focus.
All right, and so that bullet point will strike the 2 underneath it.
The sub-bullets.
What's that? These 2 points, I marked them in yellow because they were marked as being a potential trouble at the Transit and Transportation Committee. And this is something we've been doing every year, and it's something that we're actually good at. And it goes quickly and it has an impact. So
Too many others.
yeah, so, and this point has been in the work plan as it stands for years. So this is not just that we tried to fix the work plan and we messed up and the council got upset at us. It's that they're taking a closer look at these plans altogether than they have compared to what they've done in the past. But anyway, Kay said, how do we know that this is not just you don't get to decide what's going to get resurfaced. There's no prioritization in what you do. All you get to talk about is the paint once they decide which roads are up for resurfacing. So reword this to make sure that it doesn't seem like you have the ability to prioritize what gets resurfaced. And you wrote something for that.
I
didn't you?
can see that.
Right. I think her comment
Yeah,
was
I think-
making sure that it was advising,
Yeah, he's right on point with that one.
yep.
Looks like all my stuff did not save, Mary. I must not have saved right. We wrote coordinate, focus citizen input to consolidate recommendations for, no, that's not right either. I'm sorry. This one looks like I messed up my notes. Do you remember what we said, Mary, for this
I
one?
think it was about focusing, because we were trying to sync it up with language from, can you reference that plan? What plan? Which plan?
Well, what I have in my notes from our meeting with Kay Crowder was review and support staff recommendations of the annual street, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was just make sure that it's clear that we're acting on staff recommendations. We're not making those recommendations.
So let's go with review and support staff recommendations for annual street resurfacing projects pertaining to pedestrian and bicycle facilities.
Good.
The next one was review the UDO and advise with the best practices for cycling facilities and infrastructure. Is that what we had originally, or is that our new words?
That looks like the old word.
The old words. So Kay's problem with this was that, I can't remember exactly what her problem with this was. I believe it was because we had, I can't remember.
Well, we kind of advised her on this one that we were looking at curb cuts, and she felt Planning Commission was doing this work and had been sent to Planning Commission. She also felt there were cost implications that we kind of need to watch, that we were stepping on the wrong toes.
I think that this is the one where she said just add to the end where possible. She said just where possible as applicable. These are her quotes. Where possible as it relates to bike, ped, and motorist safety.
Yes, that's where she did specifically say that.
So we will amend this statement, review the UDO ordinance, streetscape design standards, et cetera, where possible as it relates to bike, ped, and motorist safety.
Okay, so is that all of your plan now? Have you gotten there?
That's correct.
And you have how many bullets?
And that will come down to 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets. Is that right? Yep. 4 bullets for us. The outreach committee is golden.
And did anyone have any comments or concerns about what he is recommending for the bicycle group? Because we're all going to try to vote on this tonight.
I just wanted to point out in discussion on the item for the street resurfacing, I pointed out that another advantage that BPAC has provided over the years is to focus citizen input. We've often held discussion with citizens to comment on the ones that are currently up for discussion that year. I thought that we had a good role in focusing those comments together to achieve what's stated here, to review and recommend. So that wording was lost in this summary. I just wanted to point out that I thought that was an important role that we've done in the past. If you feel that that's covered with this wording, then I'm comfortable.
I feel that our goals are still there and nothing's restricting us from doing that. I don't think that the language identifies that benefit of our involvement, and if you think that it's important, I have no problem with amending the language to include it in some way. Anybody else?
Any other comments?
Could you repeat what you specifically would like the wording to be? Is it including in one of these bullets, or is it a separate bullet?
No, it's included in this bullet. Review and support staff recommendations for annual street resurfacing programs is what's currently stated there. My recommendation was to include the fact that we are focusing citizen input as part of that recommendation process.
So can we just add to the end, review and support, et cetera, for resurfacing projects by focusing?
Actually, how would it sound at the beginning? Focus citizen input and review and support staff recommendations for annual street resurfacing.
Do we focus?
That's better.
Citizen input? What do we have to do with citizen input on that? Oh, we do it, yeah.
We get lots of comments. We
Yeah,
have
you're right.
open houses. We talk to those that have sent us emails about this. It's important, especially when we've had years where there's been 20-plus projects. There's hundreds. I'm sure Eric can recall we've had upwards of 500 comments that came in from citizens, either through open houses or through emails. And we helped to focus those into quick summaries, and then we've actually gone before council occasionally and said, okay, on these 16 projects, there was no particular issue. On these 4 or 5, there were these concerns. We summarize them and we make recommendations.
And primarily those have been situations where the resurfacing is on a neighborhood or avenue street that involves changes to the on-street parking.
Right.
I don't understand how the verb focus is being used here, though. Are we obtaining that citizen input, or are we
We're consolidating.
creating?
Filter or
What is the real
summarize?
verb we're doing? Because the focus seems wrong.
If this is taking the main point of this bullet away, then I can certainly withdraw the wording.
No,
I
no, I
thought
don't-
it
I
was an
think it's-
important role that we had here.
No, I think it's fine to put it in there, but I feel focus is an odd verb.
Seek input
Then
on.
consolidate would be a better word.
I agree. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I feel like focus is something else. Okay, so does anybody else have any comments? What was that?
Compile. I don't know, sorry.
I think consolidate.
Thesaurus is-
Consolidate consolidate is a
Yeah,
concise
it
verb. I
is.
like
Yeah,
it.
you got it.
Yeah. So anything else on?
Compile what? I mean,
Exactly. Anything else on this one? Because if we kind of come to consensus, I think we've already said that community outreach can probably be left alone. And if in the next few minutes, we could come up to some consensus about what to do about pedestrian
Oh my
planning,
gosh, look at all the yellow.
we can,
Just kidding.
I can read to you what I have just, I took what was in our approved draft and consolidated it down to 3 bullets. The first is review and provide input on the Raleigh Streets Handbook update and the city's various corridor and master plan studies. We can put including gateways, transit, et cetera. I'm a little concerned that that's duplicative with the overall commissions, but perhaps that's
I got
fine.
the impression that they weren't too concerned about that, that like some of our general stuff could overlap with our specific initiatives.
Yeah, I would imagine that
I
we
like
often
your, I like
remand
your
things
first
into
bullet.
committee.
I think your first
Okay.
bullet's on point.
And then the second one, coordinate outreach activities such as Walktober and support education and enforcement campaigns related to pedestrian facilities and safety. And then the third, and this one might have to be struck, is identify other city committees for opening cross-communication to create synergy for pedestrian issues. So first question, are we allowed to include the
You're using
collaboration with
others.
committees? Okay.
Well, you're using
Strike it.
yeah, I think that the,
Sure. That will
working-
happen through the
It-
other
it-
projects.
Right, yes. I think that the point is that if we are doing these jobs well, we are coordinating and working. It's not that we can't work with those city committees, but we do not have the ability to go to some other group and ask for staff time or
Okay.
bother their staff time, so.
Okay, so if we have two
I think
bullets.
that was one of the ones she
Want
did
to add a
bullet.
different third bullet, or are you good with 2? Because I'm wondering,
No.
do you want to identify which bullets you're condensing into each to make sure we're not missing any?
Sure, so.
Or do you want to hear their, did you guys go through this one?
No, we didn't
Oh,
even
you did not
workshop.
get to this one, okay.
So for the city's various corridor and master plan studies and the streets handbook is quite broad, right? So that would be everything from curb cuts to when you install pedestrian signals. Are those in the handbook? Well, maybe we'll bring back the signals in intersection design. We could do a focus study on intersection design. That could be our third bullet. It's what we identified as our priority items.
Right, because that includes curb cuts.
Correct.
Yeah,
I was,
pedestrian
when
improvements.
I consolidated, I was thinking that those are under the streets handbook, but they are not necessarily.
Let's add that then.
Okay, that'll be the third bullet would be, study.
Can we get Dwight to type up your 3, so we can all see them?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure, would you read it to me?
Yes.
He's not a great typist, but it's okay.
I can bring my
Offense.
He's doing a great
But he's a
job.
willing
He is doing a
servant,
great job.
and
We are
that's
not gonna, we're not gonna
all
shoot him
getting
down.
tired, Dwight.
But somebody does need to kind
We're
of
mocking
spell
him on
check
live
behind that,
television.
but it's okay. He's doing great.
Thank you, I think.
You're doing great, but
Kind and patient.
Thank
sir.
you.
All right. Review and provide input on the Raleigh Streets Handbook update. I'm not even gonna look at that screen yet.
And we'll wordsmith that for the
Yeah,
actual
for
title.
sure. And the city's various corridor and master plan studies.
he's really trying to.
Yeah,
show you.
Well, look at him go. I take it back. I owe you an apology.
Be down in this little hole right here.
Teach us to
The
critique.
man can type.
The keyboard is very hard.
Yeah, well, I've used that keyboard. It's not, yeah.
All right, second bullet, coordinate outreach activities. Such as Walktober. And support education. And enforcement campaigns. Related to pedestrian facilities and safety.
Since we've mentioned Walktober 3 other places in this document, can we
can
just
strike it.
strike it as an example, but it would be included?
Yes. Yes.
I like that. I like the way you're thinking too.
Great.
Because why are we listing one thing? Yeah, I think, is there one more bullet? You had this. Yeah.
Well, we talked about
The curb cut.
review
Intersection design.
intersection design standards and city policies as they relate to pedestrian safety.
Love it. One of the things that I'll bring to everyone's attention is that some of the things that are not being stated now are working with the police liaison, the crash data, and maintenance issues as they relate to pedestrian and bicycles. So have we
Got
lost?
crash data covered in.
Crash data is in there?
In the bicycle. It was one of the, it was.
Okay, it was there.
Collecting data.
Okay. What about maintenance? Because a lot of the complaints we hear from citizens are there's leaves in the bike lane, there's debris on the sidewalks, there's this, there's that. So do we need some
I
kind
certainly
of?
think those are important. I guess I question how the pedestrian committee, as a subcommittee of the full BPAC, could take action on that.
Okay.
I mean,
good point.
Should that be
if you will think there is some kind of study we need to do, if we need to hear from staff on whether, there are systems of maintenance.
Is it covered in other bullets?
Sure, but we can't advocate for any kind of increase of funding or changing. We can
advise. Well, the other thing we don't really mention in here sufficiently, with the exception of the bike committee, is taking public comment and acting on public comment.
I was going to say,
That
that could be an
in
easy.
all of them, right? That should
Bullet
be it.
4? I can't write bullet 4 here.
So the working with police liaison, public comment, crash data, and maintenance were the 4 things that I'm hoping we've covered. And you're saying we covered crash data.
Bullet 2.
Perfect.
And I
Bullet 2
think
in the
that working
bicycle.
with police liaison is covered under working with staff, getting reports and receiving data from
Okay,
staff.
good point. And as would maintenance perhaps as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe
what was the last?
receive public input, like, you.
Yes, the public input is the one thing I don't see us, except for when we talk about consolidating.
That should be an overall goal of the commission.
Agree.
So I'm writing up here bullet number 4 for the general outlines.
Right.
I think
Receive
that-
public
I think that
input.
receive public input should be up there.
Yes,
It seems-
I think we should,
And advise and recommendations,
right,
right?
receive public input and advise. Yeah, that,
And so, but related to,
what time are we at? Oh, we're doing good.
You've mentioned public as this titled section. Dwight, is that a general commission initiative?
yes.
Okay, so it would go at
That
the
is going to
beginning.
go back into public. Are there 4 or are there 5? I thought there were more.
There were 3 named bullets, and then we added 2. So yeah, this is actually bullet number 6. Sorry,
Okay, thank you.
my random naming scheme. This is going to be bullet point number Z.
Okay.
It's qualitative, not quantitative.
Okay, so has anybody else taken a moment to look through pedestrian and make sure they do not feel that, Elizabeth did this pretty much on the fly since probably
Sure.
noon today when she was.
Yeah, I mean,
warned.
I don't mean to minimize this whole list. I'm taking a lot of words out of it.
I think you still allow your
Yeah.
committee the flexibility to do the work that you want to do.
That's right. And, my short tenure, it feels like items are sent to our subcommittees on kind of an ad hoc basis.
Right.
And this leaves us room to do that. And also, it's unclear to me what the efficacy is of the subcommittees in making policy recommendations or guiding our police force
Right.
on how they should do their job.
Well, I bring,
Not that we
that's
don't
why.
have opinion.
Yeah, that's why I brought up the crash data, because it was on the work plan for
Yeah.
pedestrian. And then we added the construction zone issue. I think that goes with maintenance or staff reports or something.
I think that these are all
Certainly
very,
interesting information.
Right.
they're very valid, and if there's something that comes up that we need to address, then I think this gives us the flexibility to address that.
Okay.
Unless it's something that somebody wants to champion and bring to the table as their issue that they're going to push forward this year, and we're going to have something substantial to report to council as a result in a year, I wouldn't want to have it specifically called out.
All right.
One question I do have is whether or not this supports staff's work program in the Office of Transportation Planning, and if there are things we should add that support you all.
Could you even include a bullet that said that, like support staff in the implementation of, if that's what we're trying to do?
I wouldn't worry about it at this point.
Okay, great.
Okay. But that is a good point. Does staff see anything that they feel is being missed?
we're using their time.
Okay. All right, so what I understand is that we've been asked to get this back to Councilmember Crowder, and that perhaps if we're on point, it can just be a brief item on the, since she was the one who sent it there with a lot of comments, if we're in agreement with her, we should be able to expedite this. So would everyone feel comfortable? And then the next question is, does that leave the typing to Dwight?
So I think that two things, yeah, we'll need to ask for Mr. Otwell to send us a copy. Now that you've pulled these things together, we'll put it into the BPAC work plan format and
Okay.
repackage it.
Perfect.
The commission does need to take a vote on this because you are
Right, right. I was
offering-
going to say, if we're going to vote on, we need, if people are ready, we need to have a motion and a second and take a vote on this, so.
So I was going to move that, that we carry forward these amended work plans as discussed. tonight
Second.
To the council's transit committee for consideration.
Now second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Thank you.
Could we also discuss nominating a representative for this meeting to speak on behalf of the BPAC? We've been invited to attend as observers. I think it would be helpful to have somebody that has the commission's support to stand and respond. Nobody would be able to make unilateral decisions about the work plan, but we'd be able to speak with an official voice.
I would think it would be the chair, which will be, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, will be someone other than myself. But normally the chair or vice chair would probably do those duties, and unless they would like to pass, if they're not available or if something comes up. So I would say, we would start with the chair or the vice chair, and
That's correct.
but one can gather at the podium in a large ensemble if they prefer. So. Okay, so did we take the vote? Yes. Yes, we did. We're done with that. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your.
I just have one question. What if she still doesn't like what we voted on? And would that still take it back to, what did you call that word?
There's definitely the potential that they'll say, hey, you missed something, we thought of something, or there could be some other transit member that comes out of nowhere with some recommendations, and in which case, this will come back to the BPAC.
It actually does not have to. Once
they could
the
amend our
commission.
work
Something
once
about getting in the pool of, something was mentioned about it going to some type of, what did you call that word? If we didn't vote on this tonight, it would have gone to some type of,
It would
There
still
would've
be
been
on
some
the
back and
Still
forth.
going to the
Right.
trans.
agenda.
But at this point, the revised work plan will be presented to the city council. The city council can make edits, can make the changes that they wish to see. They can remand it back to the commission if they want to for more complete changes, but the city council can make their own edits to the work plan.
all right.
Excellent. So it doesn't necessarily have to come back to us.
Right.
It has been recommended that we are all trying to work together, and we really do appreciate, the amount of care and thought that the councilwoman put into this, because
Yeah.
You read it, that's
well, I was just going to say, well, she read them all, and we're not the only, by the way, in case we didn't bring that to your attention, we're not the only commission who was kind of asked to come and speak about this. So I think it's trying to make us efficient and sharper, and I appreciate that. Let's see, we're now on new business, I believe,
Yes, ma'am.
which would be the 2019 resurfacing program with Mr. Paul Black.
So it's now 8 o'clock. We had discussed perhaps postponing this item, and we could discuss it again. Paul was not married to giving it tonight, and we're close to the end, and we still have business to take care of.
If it pleases the board, we could move this to next month. However, everything is included in your packet if you wanted to review them. If you wanted to just, if there were questions about a specific one of the streets that was resurfaced and restriped, we could entertain that now. But if you wanted a longer report, again, whatever pleases the board.
Well, I tend to agree with Mr. Otwell that we are approaching the 8 o'clock hour, and we do have Walktober and elections and announcements and a lot of other things. We have at least another, I'd say, 10 minutes.
Do we need to amend the agenda again to postpone that, or is a postponement?
It's on the agenda, so it's a matter of making a motion to table it until the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we table it? This is 2019. These are ones that have already happened, or are these Oh,
or are happening now.
happening now. Okay, great.
Right, and is that usually protocol that we don't find out, that we don't discuss these until they're already in implementation stage?
In the past, we've brought them to you earlier.
Yeah.
We did not have substantial changes or impacts in the community.
And they have been to the bike committee back in February. In fact, I think they went even earlier than that, and then North Hills came back and actually was dealt with in February. That was the one that I brought because I thought I'd get questions about it.
Okay.
North Hills is going back as is with some minor improvements. Places where there were no diagonals to delineate the space, those are going in, and there are going to be some additional skips at intersections that did not exist in the original. But we're not reallocating the pavement anyway on that.
Can you tell me the schedule for corporate center? Or if it's already been
I
done?
think it may already be on the ground.
Oh,
I'm not certain.
So this one was a little bit more of an informational item.
yeah, okay.
But we're happy to hold it over to
Curious.
next meeting. It's no
Well, I
problem.
was going to say, I mean, I believe a lovely presentation has been prepared for us, and I would really like to give it the time it's due. So, Mr. Otwell, were you about to make a motion?
I move that we table this conversation until the next meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. So that moves us on to Walktober planning, which is also Mr. Paul Black.
So Walktober doesn't get the staff time that Bike Month gets, and the main reason for that is it's a lot easier to do. If I have a lot of people walking in an event, it's called a parade, and it's not as difficult to coordinate. A lot of the events are actually not on public roads. I don't have to close anything, unlike bikes, where a lot of times we are looking for things like the Raleigh Police to get involved, and we are shutting down streets, or we are dealing with issues that endanger folks if we don't have additional support. I think the Light Up the Night Ride was a good example of that. We really had a lot more people than we were prepared for. We had 170 riders, and we didn't have nearly enough support for folks to take up the back and to be the road guards during the ride. It was a little bit of a learning experience for us. Likewise, on the history ride, we ended up with some unexpected barriers, and we ended up taking folks on a group ride wrong way down one of our streets briefly, which made me extremely nervous. I don't have those kind of coordination issues with the pedestrian events. It's just a much easier thing to put on. Also, in the past, it's been my understanding, I'm not here, and I'll turn to our institutional knowledge, that this has been largely carried by the BPAC in terms of setting up, and the staff just supports whatever is going on. That we haven't been as active in terms of like setting up events. And even with Bike Month, we only have one or two that we fully support. The rest are just supporting other advocacy groups in the region. So in terms of a calendar, Walktober is easier to put together, which is why you don't see us planning for it 5 and 6 months ahead of time. We have a couple of national events. There's Walk to School Day is one of the big ones that we work around. Fontaine, are there any others that come to mind? I haven't done one yet, so this is new territory for me.
So last year, the commission's strategy was primarily highlighted by doing walking tours and organizing multiple walking tours around different themes. And in some cases, the commission members individually led those. And then the Walk to School event was organized, I believe, by NCDOT last year. It has been done by DOT in the past, and they pick all the different schools in Wake County have the option of participating in the day, and then there's a flagship school usually that's chosen as one of the more public events, and so we certainly provide the support for that.
Yeah, so we'll coordinate all of the packets that go out to the schools, and they'll be lined up in boxes, and they'll come and get them, but that's sort of our involvement. And then usually we will pick one of the schools, try to do the same one that NCDOT is doing, and our staff will go out and support that, and that will also be sort of where we tell the media we're going to be.
But another advantage that the staff gives is helping with the marketing information, and at least a program and a link on a web page that goes to a list of all the activities. That's very important, and I think that's still what we would hope to partner with you to do this for this year.
And that's certainly how we see our role.
Okay.
Well, I think my concern is that very little usually happens for Walktober, and what does happen is not very highly successful. So I believe, this year's coming up quickly. I'm not sure if we're going to resolve that, but I feel, it's been a bit half-hearted. I don't feel that we're really making huge strides. And I don't mean that as an insult to anyone on any committee. I've been involved in it myself, and I've sat there waiting for no one to show up for a tour. So I really think that it would be, and like I said, if we don't address it for this year, I think that the commission should really be thinking about what pedestrian events would gain more bandwidth and how they could be more successful. I believe it's been a couple years before there was a poster at all, and I don't think it was sent anyone except for the commission members. So it feels a little bit more planning, and I just sort of feel like it's kind of a tragic thing. And I would love for us to work together as a commission, as well as staff, to try to elevate Walktober to, maybe what are other communities doing? What are other, a lot of people, I've done some research, a lot of people also have Steptember.
Too late for that. We don't got that
Not to make it
anymore.
all about Walktober, it could also be Steptember. But, I think, what other things
Maybe
are
some
happening?
commercial spots, some places so we can get it, like the benefits of walking as being more healthy, something like that.
Yeah. Well, a couple years ago, when Dan Howe was on the commission, we got the hospital involved, we had goodie bags, we had all sorts of things, and absolutely no one showed up. So
But there
I
are
think-
some that have worked well, like the cemetery tour is always well attended. So maybe if we could identify like the top 2 or 3 that have functioned well and build maybe one new one into it, and then that would limit the bandwidth, but also help us be successful.
Right, well, that's my point, is that if we have to do even less, I think that would be good if we do it successfully.
Well, I wasn't going to mention this, Elizabeth and I conferred about this, but maybe it might promote more interest if a group of blind folks walk around and test the sidewalks as a part of pedestrian, safety for our sidewalks. I'm not so sure how it might fit with Walktober exactly, but people walk down sidewalks, and we're going to get together and talk about it more, flesh it out more, but as president of Wake Federation of the Blind, I think it's a good idea to have us test the sidewalks to see how safe they really are, at least some of them in our area.
A walking audit,
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
that could be a new activity that was spearheaded.
I know that, I love the idea. Another idea that seems to have been successful that the Parks Department did was on Pi Day. They, like, if you did something that was 3 point whatever miles, you got like a medal in the mail. And it seemed kind of hokey, but apparently it was like a huge success. Like, everybody really wanted that medal. So maybe there are ways that we can look at partners and other city boards and commissions that might have also been promoting walking in all of its facets, as well as groups like schools and the Commission for the Blind. And
That's good stuff.
it's hard because it's like universal, right? Walking is a
In
broad
regard
activity.
to timing, I've talked to our communications department. They're happy to help with putting out a press release or creating a poster, but they do require significant lead time,
All right.
probably 2 months minimum. And that's just for a basic poster. Anything extra, if we're sending out information, I'd say probably 4 months lead time.
Right.
So
to
that's
get
not this
that
October.
information.
Right, well, and that's why I say, perhaps that's my point. Maybe we do less this Walktober so that we can do more and better in the future. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention because, and I brought it up the last meeting, that, where there's a lot of activities that happen around Bike Month, and I feel that Walktober is a little sad.
Well, and one of the challenges that we have is that we don't have the pedestrian advocacy community the way that we have the bicycle advocacy community. We have a partnership with Oaks and Spokes that helps with a significant amount of the program, which we're very thankful for. We don't have that same kind of parallel in the pedestrian sphere at this point.
Right.
Yeah, and even beyond Oaks and Spokes, I think North Carolina Bicycle Club did some of the events. I think they helped with the May the 4th ride during Bike Month. So there's like 5 or 6 groups that
Right.
are all putting things on.
Yeah, I
You just have
understand.
to-
I understand that. That's what I'm saying. It's external pressure that is driving a lot of this stuff, as well as, it's national stuff. So anyway, just something to think about. But what are we going to do this October?
Well, we've got options, right? We can push it through and try and do a Walktober this October, which is in 60 days, or less than. Or, we can plan for 2020. That might be something to do. I don't think that there would be any shame or anything for just saying, okay, calendar snuck up on us, we had other things we're looking at, let's start planning for next year now, because if we need 4-month lead time to put it in the Raleigh activity book or Parks and Rec thing, then let's do this now. We could do that. We could also just do, okay, we're gonna do, I don't know, I don't even know, we could just see if the cemetery is available on the last weekend in October to do an evening tour, because that one was popular, and just do one walk. I think there's a lot of space for growth for the future, and I agree with you that we're getting stuff done, but it doesn't seem like it's benefiting the community. It's not scaling well. It's not scaling well. So I'm going to put this back to everyone, because again, this initiative is primarily commission member led, and so if we want to go ahead and push and try and do a walk every weekend in October, we can have ownership over a walk, and you can go forth and do it. Or if we want to say, okay, time snuck up on us this time, let's just see what ones worked, and just do one walk for October. It's all up to commission members. I will review what were successful in the past. There's a Southeast Raleigh walk that it's a historical walk that we have a binder for, that basically you walk a guided tour of a historical part of Southeast Raleigh. We have the cemetery tour that we partnered with the Oakwood Cemetery, and you can walk around the cemetery and walk past the spooky house in Oakwood. We've walked at Dix Park as well, which is, again, a wonderful place to walk. And then, of course, Susan's made a sustainability tour, which you've packaged in.
It's really the Office of Sustainability, and Paul and I kind of pulled it together and jazzed it up a little
Yeah,
bit. But
so-
no one showed last year, so
Yeah.
I really would be remiss if I didn't tell you I don't think I'm going to volunteer.
And it's not a failure to not push a square peg through a round hole.
Right.
But
Maybe it
again,
is that there are like some group walking events that are appropriate as, I think a group walk might be different than a group ride. Maybe we're trying to model after bicycle activities, and that we could focus more on kind of a social media campaign or an advocacy campaign during the month, and less on group events.
And Raleigh has a large, successful history of running events, run events.
I mean, seems like that's a running event every weekend.
Exactly. I got
I'm
my
less-
thing in the mail today did you do that one? I get one a lot. I'm over there in Glenwood South, and they close streets there a lot. But
My strong interest is in walking as a mode of transportation, and that's a hard fit for special events. Did you walk to work? Oh, no, you're the 1% of our community that does, because you can't, right? Maybe that could be sorry to be a total downer, but maybe that could be part of that. It says pushing, highlighting visibility of our barriers to walking.
The walking
That's all
audit.
be part of
a walking
Walkover.
audit would be very interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be a more productive
Teach people how to do their
way
own
for
walking
us
audits
to.
and be an advocate.
Well,
Yeah, and give prizes. No.
so
Did you walk on the side of a highway to get to work? Congratulations, because that's what the people near
We'll
my
send-
house do.
right. So as a follow-up, next item, is it too late to send this to the community outreach subcommittees to clarify next steps? Do we need to have clarification for everything right now?
no, we don't have to do anything tonight. My point is, there's there's one more meeting, and then
Right.
it's October.
Right.
So, and like I said, I'm not trying to blame, pedestrian or outreach or staff. I don't think that's the point. I think, we do, I love that you listed the things that we're successful at, because maybe we do repeat some of those. Or maybe we just take the time off to rethink what it is we should be doing. Okay. And, I don't know. It's not for me to decide. I just feel like having tried to participate and, I put a lot of time and energy into things that have produced absolutely no bandwidth. And
I think Rebecca's right when you say it's not scaling right. So I think it's good to think back on maybe the one new thing we did would be a walking audit, because that feels like a really beneficial potential end product that we could start conversations in the community on engaging important issues. And then, if we knew that the cemetery walk was successful, that's a way to lean into something that's already existing that works.
the National Walk to School Day is
Is
going to
already
happen.
happening.
Yeah, I'm not saying call off everything.
There we go. We got it.
Right.
Right.
October.
We're
And-
done.
And Eric
It is
also
a
mentioned
series.
that he would like to bring the former BPAC folks together, so that could be another thing you throw on the calendar.
Yeah, maybe that party's a walking event.
One other
Up
option
to-
that you have is to be able to do some type of speakers-based event, and have some type of citywide advertised.
But that's a little tight for this year. You think?
Depends on,
I don't know. Anyway.
I'm just putting it out there.
Sure.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think I heard Rebecca quickly summarize what we have available to us this year.
Yeah. Oh, you, again?
No.
Oh,
You suggested that we have 3 events that we
yeah,
could
3
do.
events. It's a series, and one is Walk to School Day. We'll reach out to the cemetery and see if they're available. They're really good partners. And then the third one is a walking audit.
Could be.
I think that would be a good use of our time. Yes.
So the thing about doing a pedestrian safety walking audit, there needs to be a geography associated with it. So it's usually not just a sprawling effort. There's typically a focus, so there's an area. Now, I will tell you that one of the things that's in the works right now, we've been working with NCDOT on a pedestrian safety initiative for the north half of downtown. This is in response to a pedestrian fatality that we had on McDowell Street and the feedback from the state government employees about needing to improve safety. So I know that they are lining up a pedestrian safety audit for the field for a lot of government employees. I don't know what the time frame for that is, but we could see if that happens.
September 11th.
Okay.
And some of you may get invitations after the conversation I had with the lead consultant
Okay.
today.
So that does not overlap with Walktober.
It's a September.
But.
There you go.
But we may be able to cover, if we can mimic what they do with the resources we have, we may be able to cover a part of downtown that they did not get to. That might be an easy lift. Because we'll have a template, we'll sort of have had some experience, maybe more than one of us has been out there, and we could go and say, we're gonna do an additional 6 blocks or something, whatever is feasible. But I think that's something we could try to take on.
The other area we focused on in the past with a couple of events was Glenwood South. And that was at the invitation from the downtown living advocates and looking at doing an event that generated a lot of feedback from the folks that were in that area.
There's a lot of walking occurring there.
Do you all have a social media strategy for your office, or does that go through you all? Do you operate Twitter accounts? Can you influence the city's social media schedule to see if we can get some Walktober?
I was even also wondering about Raleigh TV.
It's the
So-
cities.
We do not have an explicit written social media strategy.
Okay.
But we do have, we're active on multiple platforms.
Cool. I mean, it seems like certainly we should be able to promote this on social media.
Yeah.
It
The
does.
city should too.
If it goes through, we have more control over the Raleigh Moves account.
Uh-huh.
If it goes through the Raleigh Gov social media, that does have to go through our communications department.
Yeah.
And that does require more advanced notice.
Yeah. It seems like, if it's a conversation with Damien of what they could do for the city to promote Walktober.
And they're good, if we have events and we're just asking them to publicize an event, that's
Yeah.
actually pretty straightforward and easy.
I mean, I would like
Or
to
we just publicize it and ask them to
information.
retweet us.
That's typically they end up retweeting.
Yeah. Yeah, it just feels a little like frustratingly reactive instead of proactive on their part. I mean, if it's Walktober, there's plenty of information about walking, about city walking, city sidewalk projects, whatever, even if it's just like a focus of their social media continuous output.
That's a great idea.
It's like when they're on RTN, like if there's not something that's like, breaking news, it's like they're circling through stuff. So it's like your background theme that,
You raise an interesting point about drawing attention to certain city programs. So there certainly is the opportunity to draw attention
you
to
can petition for a sidewalk.
our sidewalk program, both the city initiated and the petition based, and then the timing of the work that you're doing on the streetscape updates is certainly aligning with this.
Thematic way of pushing their information out.
Yeah.
That hashtag that they use.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking right along the lines of what I'm thinking, is that for a few of us to put together a walking tour that's not highly promoted and not highly attended is not really increasing the bandwidth about what the city of Raleigh is doing about walking.
Well, it doesn't feel like the city of Raleigh government is promoting walking.
Right. So I think that
Promoting us promoting walking.
Yeah. So I think that sounds great. What else on Walktober? We'll move on.
That's it. I will reach out to the cemetery folks, and I will figure out when Walk to School Day is, and then we'll talk about doing a walking audit, figure out what weekend works best. So
Perfect.
I think we'll have 3 things that makes a series, and we'll put everything in our back pocket and prepare for next year.
October 2nd is Walk to School Day.
All right.
It's on my calendar. All right, moving along. It's time for board comments. We are kind of running late, but I don't want to preclude anyone from speaking if they have something important.
Can I make a brief comment?
You may.
I missed you last month because I had the good fortune to spend a month in Germany visiting family. And I got to see so many people on bikes and so many people walking. And specifically thought of you all while I was in Berlin, where they have a really extensive network of off-street cycle facilities, and got to observe where they worked well and where they worked incredibly poorly. And so much of it related back to our conversation about the downtown transportation plan, and when you have high volumes of cyclists and high volumes of pedestrians mixed. And it really, from my limited observation, the success or failure boiled down to whether or not you had enough dimension, and whether or not there were vertical separation, in particularly high volume places where people might be crossing instead of moving in a linear fashion. And just wanted to reiterate, as we move forward in looking at, maybe premier is not the word, an improved pedestrian or cycling facility that is at the back of curb, that if not done carefully can have a really adverse impact on everybody but cars. So when we are advocating for those, let's remember that those two modes are interrelated and they both need enough width.
Excellent. Well, thank you. You should just invite us to see your slide presentation, I guess.
A lot of pictures of pavement.
I bet you did. I won't.
What are you doing?
I won't go into any detail here, but I was at a family reunion and we stopped in Richmond just to ride the BRT, and I was riding it with rather critical eye. And I will say that there's some things that are excellent, and then there's some situations where pedestrians are being encouraged to take incredibly dangerous movements across the streets and things like that. So we'll talk about that.
Technically, they're jaywalking, and they're at fault.
They are at fault because they are jaywalking.
Well, and for the benefit of the newer commission members, we have in the past had commissioners that have done travel and come back and done travelogue presentations to show pictures of their experience in other places.
More pictures of pavement if I knew I could do that.
So are you suggesting that Ms. Alley might put together a brief presentation for us someday in the future?
I don't have enough to give a full presentation, but I'll certainly send you a picture of a cyclist traffic jam and scooters.
Okay. Anything else on board comments? Because the next on our agenda item is election of chair and vice chair. Wow. And so what do we need to do that?
If you will yield the gavel to me, I'll be happy to walk you through that exercise.
Excellent. Well, before you yield the gavel, though, I do want to say how much I want to thank Well, first off, I would like to thank council for ever letting me be on this auspicious group. I'd like to thank those of you who were here and voted me to this position in the past. There's just a couple of you remaining. I really appreciate it. It's been a lovely honor, and I've really enjoyed working with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to step into some other thing, and it's bittersweet. I've really enjoyed doing it. So I want to thank you all and say goodbye. I am going to conduct the meeting till the end, I believe, and the new chair will take over.
Next month.
Well, no, immediately after this meeting, won't they?
You're right. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
they take over immediately after this meeting because I will not be chair next Tuesday. So I will turn it over to Mr. Lamb, and he can tell us how to do this.
Thank you. So I'll open the floor for nominations for chair.
Honor?
Go ahead. Everybody's leaning forward.
I'm not nominate Mary Sill.
I will second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close the floor. All in favor of Ms. Sill, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Dwight Otwell as vice chair.
I second.
Who was nominated?
Dwight?
Oh, Dwight, yeah.
Are there any other nominations? If none, we'll close the floor. All in favor of Mr. Otwell, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, both of you.
Lovely. Welcome aboard, and I'll be turning over the gavel just momentarily. The next thing is announcements, upcoming events. I did want to wave one thing in your face very quickly, that the North Carolina Bike Walk Summit is coming, and the early bird discount is over September 6th. So if anybody is interested in attending that, you should probably get moving on that. But the actual conference is in November 8th and 9th in Winston-Salem. Other announcements?
Traditionally, we've had an announcement this month about the big bicycling event in New Bern. With just a full disclosure that I'm involved in planning this event, we have 75% of the 2,000 cyclists that show up at this event are mostly from the Raleigh, Durham Triangle area. It's the Bike MS New Bern fundraiser the weekend of September 7th and 8th in New Bern, North Carolina. You can go look online for look up Bike MS New Bern and find out how to be part of that fundraising. It's 2 days of bicycle riding, distances between 30 and 100 miles each day. And like I said, you'll join 2,000 other cyclists for a pretty nice event.
Yeah.
And they have great maps of the routes.
Excellent maps around.
Good mapping.
If you missed that, there's a similar event. There's a Bike MS event in Tour of Tanglewood, which is near Winston-Salem. That's the last week of September 28th and 29th. Similar idea, mostly pulls from the Triad and Charlotte area. But these are big events with thousands of cyclists and raising money for a good cause. So thank you for letting me have a platform to tell you about that.
Excellent. Other announcements? All righty. Well then, the other announcement is the confirmation of the next BPAC meeting, which will be Monday, September 16th at 6 p.m. And our chair, Ms. Sell, will be in charge at that time. So with no further business, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you much.
Thank you.